Hi everybody, my name's Liz. I'm going to kind of moderate things tonight. I just wanted to start with a couple of housekeeping items. There's a sign that says no public restrooms, but there really are restrooms right behind this wall. If you need that. We have some water and just some light snacks back there for anybody that may need a snack break. We have 2 cameras set up. If there's anybody that does not want to be on camera, has an objection, please leave your name at the desk and we can blur out faces.
Oh, I forgot to sign that.
They're not live, so the video will be updated or uploaded at a later date. Just to give a idea of how the event is expected to run tonight, we're going to give each person 4 minutes to ask a question and Mr. Borders to provide a response. If your question is asked and response given with time left in that 4 minutes, then you can ask a follow-up question. Not everyone tonight may not be able to ask a question depending on how much time we have. So if you don't get your question asked tonight, please feel free to reach out to Mr. Borders through his official email or contact his
Well, I will
office.
stick around however long it takes to get the questions answered. So.
Oh, that's nice of you.
That's very kind of you. So, again, I want to welcome you. This event is put on by Indiana Rural Voices. Indiana Rural Voices is a collective of engaged citizens committed to fostering community connections and solidarity. Through peaceful and nonviolent action, they stand up against corruption, threats to democracy, and in American politics. Their mission centers on promoting social justice, advancing inclusive values, and supporting the election of forward-thinking leaders at all levels of government. By making political activism accessible, local, and enjoyable, they aim to empower individuals to make meaningful action. I want to thank Mr. Borders for coming tonight and allow him an opportunity to provide any kind of introduction that you want to give prior to getting started.
I know this, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot that may not share the same faith as me, but when I was mayor, we always began everything with prayer. Do you mind if I start with a prayer? Is that okay?
No.
Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for everybody that's out here tonight, and we just ask that you would guide and direct us both in the questions and me in my responses as well. And Lord, we just thank you the fact that we just celebrated Easter recently and the death and resurrection of your Son. And Lord, we just ask that wisdom prevail tonight, and we just thank you so much for the beautiful day that we've got and the beautiful evening. In Christ, and we ask this. Amen. And I guess I'll introduce myself. My name's Bruce Borders. I'm from Jasonville. I serve as, I would assume, as a state representative for many of you. Some of you may not be in District 45. If you're not, that's fine too. And we went to a session that I thought would, it was about how I thought it would be. And what I mean by that, I knew that we were dealing with the $1 billion, it's not really, in essence, a deficit on the Medicaid because the bills were paid, basically. But what ended up happening, I knew that in Medicaid that we would run into a situation. What had happened is during COVID, and please don't think I'm trying to play one party against the other. I'm not trying to do that at all, but a lot more people went onto Medicaid than we were anticipating as a state. And also medical bills rose, medical inflation increased tremendously, and we're still dealing with that issue, not just us in Indiana, but throughout the entire nation. So, you know, when you have a lot more people jumping onto Medicaid that have been on it before, and you have medical costs rising, well, you run into increased spending, and it was about $1 billion from basically 2 years ago into last year when we were paying the debt, so to speak. And then this year, it's a similar thing. And so the bottom line is, in fact, when I was talking to Jeff Thompson, the chairman of Ways and Means, he explained to me, he said, you know, Bruce, he said, if we don't deal with this Medicaid, this rapid growth in the numbers of people jumping onto Medicaid as well as the medical inflation, he said, that's going to just eat up our entire budget. And so, in December, there was they do what they call a budget forecast, looking at all sorts of economic indicators and so forth to see how, basically to see how our numbers are looking as a state. And and it doesn't really help to just compare ourselves to other states. We're in better shape than most states, quite frankly. But the fact of it is that's sort of like saying, well, in the leper colony, I'm the only guy, I'm the one only missing a hand, and the other guy beside me is missing both hands or whatever. I mean, so it doesn't always do really good to compare yourself to a state around you, but we have been doing better financially. But our figures came in right before session closed. Well, I guess it would have been last Friday. It would have been 1 a.m. in the morning, the Friday prior to that, and the figures that came in, we were about $2.4 billion lower than what we were anticipating coming in. Well, that's something you can't just let go. I mean, we had to deal with it, and so what ended up happening is the governor had already requested at the beginning of session a 5% cut in most areas of state spending, with the exception of education. I've got a list of those, and I'll go through those in a bit. But basically, education was one of the big areas, and we ended up increasing it by 5% over the course of the budget. And the budget again is a 2-year budget, so it's it's a 2-year cycle, and it's roughly about $47 billion. And so anyhow, not only did he say, okay, we're gonna do the 5%, but we also want you, for the following year of the budget, we want you to hold off on, to set aside another 5%, again, because of that $2.4 billion. So I knew the budget was gonna be, again, the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And as a state legislature, this year, the budget year, the one thing we do have to do is pass a budget, and it's got to be constitutionally a balanced budget. Now, some states get around that by not funding employee pension plans, where it's off into the future and so forth. In fact, the first year that I came in as a state representative, I believe our teachers' pension fund, I think, was somewhere around roughly in the $9 to $11 billion figure in arrears. And so you talk about sweating bullets. We were sweating bullets trying to figure out how to. We've eventually righted that ship, so to speak, but it's not been easy over the years. But anyhow, so we did make it through the budget. Is it a perfect budget? No, because we're not in a perfect world. I mean, we're having to deal with a lot of imperfect issues. The other issue was Medicaid, and then of course a lot of other issues I'm sure people will have questions about. But ultimately, I would say the two big issues this year we were dealing with were Medicaid and then the budget, and it's am I satisfied with the way we ended at the end of session? I guess I would answer that with this: we did the best we could under the circumstances that we had. I mean, were we perfect? Again, that depends on somebody's definition of what they view as perfect or not. Obviously, many people are going to say, well, you did the best you could. Others are going to say, well, you should have done better. But again, we did the best we could under those circumstances. So at this point, I'll be quiet and start listening.
So we're gonna start with questions, and just so we know up front, there is going to be questions asked tonight that you're not going to like, and there's going to be answers given that you're not going to like. And we just ask for everyone to show civility and respect while we begin questions. So, you want to go first?
My brain is so full of concerns.
Sure.
What are you going to do to protect Indiana citizens against the dangerous and possibly devastating effects of carbon sequestration by the Wabash Valley resources through the eminent domain? I cite the disasters in Louisiana and Mississippi as examples of what can happen when something is breached.
On the carbon sequestration, basically you know, just north of Terre Haute, in that area.
Vigo County.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And, the bottom line is that ship has already sailed. I mean, it is, and it will go through. Again, you know, that's one that, and again, I'm not trying to pass it off onto the federal government, but the bottom line is the federal government actually had approved that, and you know, that ship has already sailed, and that project's going to go through. I mean, it's just, it simply is.
Vermilion County as well,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
because they both were cited as places to have.
Well, I
wells.
mean, when you say cited, what do you mean by cited?
To have the well in Vermilion County,
Right,
as
right.
well as Vigo.
Right, I believe in both situations, right. Yes, I'm sorry, I.
Go ahead.
I've got a question for you about Senate Bill 287, which was just passed. And for anybody that doesn't know, that bill was regarding school board matters, and specifically, my concern with that bill is that it made school boards partisan elections, which precludes anybody that are constituents of yours that work for the federal government, which includes NSWC Crane, that has 4,000 employees, the U.S. Postal Service, which has post offices in every town, and the federal prison in Terre Haute, which I'm sure in the western part of your district has a lot of constituents from running in those elections. And so I know specifically that has an impact on Bloomfield School District and White River Valley School District right now. And I know John Preble was he was a Crane employee that retired that was on the school district in Linton, and I can't imagine North Davies and Eastern and even Sullivan and the ones over in that area with the prison wouldn't be impacted, can no longer run for these school boards. And you voted yes on that bill, and I'm curious why you voted yes on that bill.
Well, first of all,
Crane says you can run the school board.
yeah,
Not if it's partisan.
No,
I spoke to the ethics lawyer at Crane, and if it's a partisan election, you cannot run for school board.
well, one of the things on that bill, you actually do not have to register as a Republican.
It
or
doesn't
Democrat.
matter.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is you do not have to register as
It's a
one.
partisan election. It doesn't matter if you're a partisan
That's not what Crane says.
candidate. That is what the ethics lawyer at Crane told me 2 weeks ago, and I called and spoke to your
Okay,
assistant that told me, thank you for the information.
So
Well-
whoever has the question, we're gonna give them the chance to ask the
Sure,
question.
all right. As far as why did I vote for it, I did vote for it, and if I had it to do again, I would vote for it again. The bottom line is that, what is the red for? Red for ed.
We don't like that.
Oh, okay, all right.
Very
Okay.
respectful.
Okay, I wasn't sure what the red things were, okay. The bottom line is I was talking to a teacher up in Terre Haute at the Vigo County Library. He made the comment, he said, well, you're making school board elections partisan. I said, you guys made those partisan a long time ago. And if anybody's willing to doubt that, I can show you races where I've had close to probably $1 million spent against me in races and by the Indiana State Teachers Association. And he goes, well, that has nothing to do with anything. And I said, well, it has everything to do with everything. I said, basically what you're telling me is that you want to be able to be partisan in taking, you know, money that's basically going to your union, quite frankly, and using against candidates like myself that we may not agree with, or that I may not agree with every stance that you have. And now that we're saying, okay, we're going to allow school board candidates to basically declare a party if they should so choose, then you have a problem with that. And to me, we're about probably 30 years behind in passing this legislation. So I voted for it, and I'm glad I voted for it.
Well, I don't understand how a teachers union spending money on an election has anything to do with a school board who are often at odds with the teachers union in negotiations. Has to do with allowing federal employees to be in one of the only elected positions they're allowed to be in because of the Hatch Act. The Hatch Act allows you to donate for causes that you believe in. It does not allow you to run for partisan positions.
But the bottom line is, why should a person not be allowed to declare their political party in running for a school board race?
School board shouldn't be political.
I'm sorry?
It's about kids. School board shouldn't be political.
It's already political. Those races
No,
are
it's
already.
not. Okay.
And if you look at the money that goes to the Democrat Party versus the Republican Party, it's 90-some%, maybe close to 100% versus 1 or 2%. So it's already, I mean, whether you like it or not, you and people like
Money
you
from where?
have already. If you look at the money that comes out of the teachers union, out of the State Teachers Association, almost 100% of it goes to Democrat candidates.
What does that have to do with the school board?
It has everything to do with it. And I'm talking about Democrat candidates for the school board, so they're obviously very aware of who's a Republican and who's a Democrat.
How do you know who's a Republican and who's a Democrat that's running for school board?
I don't think it's that hard to figure it out.
I think we need to know.
All right,
There's people at home.
all right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not correct.
This is a simple question, just for curiosity on my own part. On the House website, I've been following an amendment, the one that criminalizes homeless people spending too much time on public property. I can't tell from the website whether that amendment to 1014 was in the final version that was signed by the governor. And secondly, what was your position on that amendment and why?
The bottom line is that I don't think that language made it to the Senate, but there is a difference between homelessness and basically blocking traffic into a business, and that's what was happening. If you look at the bill, and I believe Andrew Ireland, from what I remember, was the author of that bill, what was happening is that there were so many steps that had to go through before, and we're talking people that were, they absolutely needed help. And I do a fundraiser every year in Indianapolis for the Mental Health Association. And I can tell you many times as I'm walking through downtown Indianapolis, particularly at night, I'll sit down on the curb and talk with a lot of the homeless people that are, wrapped up in just blankets and so forth, and give some of them money to just get some food or get them some food. But the bottom line is that, first of all, and I don't remember all the steps, but ultimately it was to get them to a place where they were warm, where they had food, and we're not talking about what we would call, what you would think of as a traditional homeless person. What we were talking about, what that bill was dealing with, as far as dealing in a criminal nature, were people that were literally going in front of restaurants, blocking the entrance to the restaurant, and then the owner of the restaurant, for example, or whatever business it happened to be, having no latitude in dealing with that. And so the ultimate goal was actually to get help for those people. And so it's one of those things that, in an 8-second soundbite, and I'm sure that, and I did vote for the initial amendment, and I'm sure there will be a postcard going, it'll show some single mother that, has, children around her and she's being hauled off to jail. Well, that's not what that bill was about at all. That bill was actually reaching out in compassion for homeless people that were literally sleeping in doorways of businesses and so forth, and ultimately getting help for those people. The Senate was they were just too nervous about the reality of it is, in this business that I'm in, the business of politics, for lack of a better word, when mailers are designed to just, to deceive and to kill you, so to speak, and they were, I think, fearful of that mailer. But the bottom line was that bill was designed to help people who needed help, so they didn't freeze to death. I talked to one of the state troopers that was working one day at the State House at the desk as they come in off the legislative parking lot, And he said, Bruce, he said, if you wanna hop in with me, I can take you around and show you where these people have their spots that they go to. And there are entire villages, for example, if you go south of the State House, and I can't remember the river that's along there, you'll see literally almost a village of people that are under an overpass there. And it was basically to allow those police officers to get those people to a place of safety. The goal wasn't to punish them, it was to help them.
Well, why does that require them to spend time in jail on a sentence and then have a fine attached to them?
To get to that point, it had to be somebody that simply refused to move, that refused to accept help, that was blocking the entry to a business or a home or whatever. I mean, there were like numerous steps to get to that point. And those people that are treating it as otherwise, and I'm not referring to you, I'm talking about legislators, they knew that the bottom line was that bill was designed to help the homeless, not to harm the homeless. It was designed to make them warm and to put food in their belly and to get them to a shower and so forth. But there had to be legislation passed that allowed a police officer to pick them up under those circumstances, and several things had to happen before that police officer could even pick them up. And the police were like, you know, they weren't nuts about it, because they were like, well, hey, these people are just gonna get out and they're gonna be right back on the street. And my brother has worked in doing mental health counseling in downtown Indianapolis, and he sees a lot of the same people over and over and over again. He'll get them, or before he was retired, he would take people into shelters and so forth, and then he would see them back out on the streets again. And I would see that same thing, especially around Circle Center Mall. You'll see them sleeping over grates. The other night, I was leaving an event east of the State House. As I was walking by, I didn't know if it was a man or a woman, but I saw an individual literally by one of the back doors of the Hilton, wrapped up, just, you know, and they had cardboard over them, they had blankets over them. And I don't think I'm criticizing them. I'm not. I mean, what a horrible situation to be in. The stench was just unbearable. You know, I'm guessing they had probably been sleeping out there every night. It was a bitter cold night, and so that bill was not designed to punish people, but to help them.
Maybe I didn't have access to all the variations to it, but the part that I read online, it seemed to be catered towards the people that were inconvenienced or offended by it.
No, it was catered towards helping people who were.
Okay, then why did they, in the part I read, they gave the right for citizens or groups to sue the local officials or police for not properly enforcing that.
There do come spots where eventually a person can be so belligerent, and again, I'm not referring to the person that I saw under the cardboard and under the blankets, but there are people that will literally go in front of a business and block it. I mean, how would you like it if somebody came to your front door and they refused to leave, and you called the police and they said, hey, that's your problem, all right, and they would not get off your property? All right, a business owner has a right to allow customers into their business, and there are places, I mean, maybe right in our neck of the woods here in rural Indiana, we don't run into that as often, but there are places, particularly in our metro areas, where it is a big issue, and so those people have a right to allow their doors to be open to customers.
So why did you vote for that then, if it's not in our neck of the woods?
Because I represent all Hoosiers.
Fair enough.
Go ahead.
Arrest him, take him to a homeless shelter.
Go ahead.
Okay, hi, I'm Robin Cravens. I like it, we are conveniently located right across the street from the courthouse, of which we lost our Superior Court. My question is, how did that happen? Why did that happen? Our court was cut for judges for another county that has much more wealth than we do.
All right, so
I'm kind of confused by
who
how all
told
that
you we lost our Superior Court?
Well, that's kind of what I heard in one of the House bills.
So there was a House bill to cut our Superior Court, and it did not it got revised, and our Superior Court is not cut, but I'll let, Bruce go ahead and provide more information on that.
All right, here's what happened, all right. First of all, it was House Bill 1144 was the bill number, and I don't remember all the numbers. Trust me, I spent more time than you can imagine on working to keep our Superior Court and our Magistrate Court, I might add as well. But what ended up happening is that I had people were going onto social media going, well, you know, Bruce Borders likes to brag about the lives that he saved, and don't worry, I'm not tooting my horn, but there is a story at the end of the story, and anyhow, and so I got a hold of the DNR, Alan Morrison in particular, and I said, Alan, I said, you know, I've been told that the pool at Shakamak is going to be closed. In fact, that was even on Shakamak's website. The park manager had put it on the website. And so anyhow, I called her and I said, Kendra, how do you know that the pool's gonna close? And she said, well, I've been told that by the DNR, so I figured, well, all right, I'll call the top dog. So I called the top dog. And so anyhow, they sent their legislative assistant and they wanted to meet with me in Government Center South. I said, no, I don't have time. I said, we have session at 12:30. And I said, can you meet me at the State House at 12 o'clock? And so the DNR legislative liaison came over to what we call LSA, Legislative Services Agency, and I had one of our attorneys, and I also had my press secretary film the whole thing because I thought I want this all on record, and then I had my press secretary there as well. But to make a long story short, they promised me by 12:30 that they would keep the pool open at Shakamak. Now there are some mitigating circumstances, in all fairness to the DNR, that you need to understand, and this does lead into the court issue. But anyhow, what ended up happening is that the pool over at Shakamak, the slide is 35 years old. And I know all of that because when I was president of the Chamber of Commerce when they put the pool in. And so we had worked really hard to get it in. Well, they didn't want to put it in over there, but they did compromise and they put a pool with a big slide in there. In fact, I can still remember John Gregg went down that slide, and anyhow, that was, and I was there the day that pool opened, and I think it was 35 years ago, I believe. Well, that pool is, you know, it's just like our bodies, as they age, they wear out, all right? And it's going to cost about $800,000 to replace that pool. I've heard two figures, $750,000, $800,000, and I got those figures from Dan Bortner, who's the superintendent of the state parks. And so, anyhow, but in all fairness to the DNR, the meeting, I had to be in session at 12:30. So at 12:30, I said, guys, I gotta go. I said, and so Alan promised me, he said, we will keep the pool open at Shakamak. And I don't want to pretend like, you know, I was the only reason that they said that. I mean, I think our meeting was a part of it, I'll be honest with you. But by 2 o'clock, there was a press release sent out to the news media, both TV and newspapers and so forth, that the pool at Shakamak was going to remain open. But he asked me, he said, if you won't issue the press release, I promise you we'll take care of that. Within an hour and a half, it was done. So I want to give kudos to the DNR for keeping their word on that. And so now, in all fairness, the pool will be open, but it's possible that the tower, they're having engineers to come down and inspect it to see if they're going to be able to open up the tower, or not the tower, the slide. Yeah, and so that issue is yet to be decided, and again, they want to make sure that it's safe. All right, then, as we were out at the pool, all right, so then Alan said, well, we're going to come down. I know I'm getting long on this, but I am leading into your question. All right, and so on a Friday following that, this was on a Monday, on a Friday following that, Alan Morrison, Dan Bortner, and Chris Smith, and I can't think of the other fellow's name from the DNR, they came down and they did a 3-hour drive-through with Kenna Duguay. Is that right, Lola? Did I pronounce that right? I think it's Kenna? I think, yeah. Anyhow, she's the park manager. And then we also went out to Redbird for 2 hours. But while I was there, I got a phone and it said Greene County Superior Court. And so I asked Ken, I said, can you stop a minute? I said, I've got to take this. So I stepped outside the big white van that she was driving us through the park in, and it was Dina Martin. And Dina said, Bruce, she said, we're going to lose our Superior Court. She said it was House Bill 1144. I said, I voted for that bill, and there was nothing in there about that. She said, the Senate added an amendment in it, and what happened is that your rural communities, the bottom line was these judges, Dina being an example, they deal with, you know, like if you go to your metro areas, you may have a judge that specializes in murder cases and divorce cases, bankruptcies, whatever the case happens to be. In your rural communities, they don't have that luxury, so they're kind of chief cook and bottle washer. And she said, we're going to lose our court. And so I called Chris Cheater, who's the head of Courts and Criminal Code on the House side, and I said, Chris, you know, this is what's going to happen again, and this is what. And Liz Brown, a senator, had offered up an amendment that passed the Senate. And so I then called Dina back, and I put Chris on a conference call with her on my phone. And then the last 2 weeks of session, I was on the phone with Dina probably 4 and 5 times a day, dealing with the whole courthouse situation, not that just that, but the magistrate court. And I'm like, you know, no, this is not fair. You know, they weren't told. They had no idea what the rules of the ballgame were. Well, anyhow, the long story short is, with the Lord's help, we were able to keep the Greene County Superior Court and the magistrate court. So, you know, I mean, there are times, I mean, I know we get kicked in the teeth a lot as you know, public servants, but there are times, you know, you feel like, hey, I'm really proud of what I did there, and I'll be honest with you, I'm really proud of what I did there.
And that was one that came down to the wire because we almost lost it.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I appreciate the community support for our judges.
Well, Chris Cheater, the head of
And-
the committee on the House side, told me, he said, tell everybody down home, I'm tired of you poking me in the eyes. And he said, I'm tired of you burning my phone up. And so he was, but anyhow, that's how it turned out. I'm
Was
sorry.
the issue a cost-cutting issue, or what was the issue? Because
No,
I know they went through and looked at cases.
Well,
How many there were?
I mean, yes and no.
Yeah.
And the reason I say yes and no, what I mean by that is basically when they did a study of the courts, and the Supreme Court looked at it as well, I talked to bless her heart, oh, for heaven's sakes, our Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
It doesn't matter.
But nonetheless, thank you. Anyhow, we talked quite a bit about it as well, and she said, we have enough judges, we just don't have them all in the right places. And so what ended up happening is we ended up keeping both of our courts. Owen County got to keep theirs, but there were some areas that lost courts. Now, you know, but my attitude, I'll be honest with you, I represent District 45, and I had several state reps ask me, they said, well, how did you keep your courts? I said, I busted my buns until I wore people out. And they said, well, I wish I would have done that. I said, no, you could have. I mean, but that's, my goal isn't to worry about their court. I mean, my goal was to worry about this court, and so that's what I did.
And we definitely appreciate keeping our court. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is, and I have to say, I have contacted your office many times during this legislative session and asked for responses. The only responses I've gotten are canned letters. I have not had any feedback with some questions that I've asked, and so I'm very disappointed in that. So where it's suggested to us that, you know, we can ask your office, I have not found that to be helpful.
Well,
so I
I'm
do
sorry
want
to
to let
hear
you know.
that, and I want to get your contact information afterwards.
It's too late. I've left it many times.
Okay.
My schools, or my question is, although you say that we have an increase in funding for our public schools, which I don't understand why you support charter schools, but we have a funding cut for our public schools. We know that because of.
No, you don't.
Yes, we do. And
no, you do not.
Can I ask my question?
Well, I feel like you said something that was inaccurate, and I'm correcting it.
Well, I can show you, we have the numbers. We know how much our budgets are gonna be cut in the next year and in the following year because of House Bill 1, or Senate Bill 1. We know what, the schools know what the numbers are. So what is your suggestion for, how are we gonna make up for those cuts? Because we are gonna lose money, which means we're gonna lose programs, we're gonna lose faculty, we're gonna lose things that we can do to help our students. And when the other things that have been cut, we know that, public health funding has been cut. You know, the housing issue, the homeless issue, it affects our students, our kids. But how are the schools gonna regroup and have those funds back? The public schools, not the charter schools.
No,
How are
charter
we
schools are
gonna
a
do it?
public school.
No.
They are a public school. They are a public school.
Why are they called charter?
Because they do have a charter under an organization that helps sponsor them, but they are indeed a charter school.
Who's the organization?
Oh, so
Okay,
Bruce, go ahead.
all right, the bottom line is the education funding effect, let me see, I've got the figures here on it. It did climb by 5% over the 2-year period.
So Bloomfield School will lose $121,000 next year.
Yes.
And the year
All
after
right,
that, it's 121.
when you say 121,000, is that below where you're at now, or is that against what you were anticipating getting?
That's below what, that's a cut. It's gonna
That's
be
below
less.
where they
We're
are
gonna get-
now,
it's less
because
than
the inflated, the number that the school uses, because I contacted Bloomfield to get the numbers, the number that the school uses is $400,000 will be cut from Bloomfield next year. But, and I believe the information that was released under SB1, it was $121,000 next year, and then $121,000 the year following.
Well, I'm looking, okay, I was looking for the figures on that.
And that's just for Bloomfield schools.
Yeah, I do know that school spending did increase in the budget by 5% over this 2-year biennium, but, and I'll be glad to get with you, and I know you may say it's too late. If it is, it is, but I mean, it's, but regardless, okay. The budget increases kindergarten through 12 tuition support by $640 million over the next 2 years compared to fiscal year 2025. And then most state agencies will reduce 5% with another 5%, basically put it on hold. But I will tell you that school funding was increased in this budget by $640 million.
But you took away
supplies.
Well, wait a minute. No, but you're, okay, but you told me your funding decreased, and now you're saying, but you took away some of our supplies, art supplies and so forth.
So Bloomfield's budget, just so, Bloomfield's budget, the budget compared to this year to next year is reduced by 121,000. There may be additional cuts in supplies and that, but the actual budget for the school is reduced by 121,000.
And
What?
I think that's the levy, that's the
Yes.
tax levy
Yeah.
component, that's not
Oh,
any
SB1.
additional state funding, I don't know the 640, that's the state, that's the property tax levy amount.
Right, well, I mean, what I will tell you right now is that overall, we did put an additional $640 million into K-12 education. I do know that for a fact.
Charter schools.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
We don't have any charters. We don't have.
Go ahead.
All right, I got a question. I wanna know, you took in donations. 50.4% of your donations were from insurance companies.
mhm,
You own an insurance company,
right,
and you're sitting on the insurance committee.
right.
How are you squaring that with the ethics?
I mean, the bottom line is we are a citizen legislature, all right? It makes sense that, all right, for example, Tanya Path, who many of you probably supported, she's a friend of mine, all right? But she's a school teacher. She serves on the education committee. Much of her donations come from, most of the people that are,
Not the same.
oh, come on.
She's
I'm
not-
sorry, but I'm
she's
not that
teaching.
stupid.
She's
Come
not
on.
teaching, you're selling insurance.
I mean, where does her
You're selling
income come
insurance.
from when she's not a legislature?
You're selling insurance, she's not teaching. It's not the same.
I believe she would argue with you that she's not a teacher. She's
I'm not saying
absolutely.
she's not a teacher, but she's not educated to be a teacher. She's not selling something and she's not working full-time.
She
as a
is
teacher.
getting paid to be a teacher, and she serves on the education committee. And much of the money that she receives as a legislator when she's running for office comes from the education community. I have no problem with that. Again, we are a citizen legislature. If you want to go to an example of a state that's not one, go next door into the state of Illinois, where they're not citizen legislators, and they're over there year round, and they basically can't meet their pension obligations because they've overpromised. So I think it's actually a very good system that we've got in the state of Indiana. I'm proud to serve on the insurance committee because I offer a level of expertise that somebody on that committee that's not an insurance agent couldn't offer, and I have no problem with the insurance industry contributing to my campaigns because they know that I know the business. And that's the same way with Tanya Path or any other teacher that's up there getting money from the education lobby. You can argue that they're not a teacher. The fact is they're a teacher, and that's what they get paid to do for a livelihood outside of the legislature, so I completely disagree with you.
I respectfully disagree with you.
No.
And that one.
Okay.
I love you.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi.
I'm Peg Wolf from Worthington, and you just elaborated in the initial start of this session here about the budget shortfalls and all that.
Right.
So I find it quite disturbing that Mike Braun has given his staff a considerable raise as well as himself.
Mm-hmm.
Plus he is planning a helipad and upgrades to his house for security reasons, whatever. And what budget does that come from, and is that going to be taxpayer funded, or is that Mike Braun's?
No, that is paid for by taxpayers, right, as part of the state's general fund.
And
right?
why should we do that?
The bottom line is that every governor, whether it be Republican or Democrat, there are security costs that are designed to protect those governors. And the reason...
At the governor's mansion.
I mean, the bottom line is every governor goes back and forth. I mean, Mike Braun basically, even on Fridays, makes himself accessible to people that want to go down to Bedford. I mean, he's accessible all week up there. And the reason for the helipad, there are times, for example, just like when we had the flooding, I forget the exact year, I know this year we've had some flooding. 2008. The bottom line is that I spent a couple of days riding around with Mitch Daniels, and what we were doing, we were with the state police. He had a security detail there, but a lot of it was so we could get through roadblock places and ultimately what we were doing is, like, I can remember we went to North Knox High School, and we've set up a system through the state of Indiana where people could come and do a one-stop shop, and a lot of people lost everything. In fact, I can still remember going through the floodwaters up by Townhall, Indiana, up by West Terre Haute, and literally going into houses and helping carry their stuff out and get it to dry ground. And
Sorry.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, we're
somebody
getting
was
too far
going,
away
why
from
does that
the-
have to do? All right, the bottom line was, all right, sometimes governors do have to get around, whether it be, and there were, Mitch Daniels landed in Worthington via a helicopter. All right, so governors,
Yes,
yeah.
I was present at that.
All right, so
Yeah, when-
there are times that, and for example, I have no problem with the idea that Mike may be at home on a Friday, a Saturday, or a Sunday, an emergency arises where he's got to leave, and you know, I mean, he's running basically a corporation that over by any is about a $47 billion corporation.
And Jasper doesn't have a airport? I know Huntingburg does.
The idea is to be able to get to things incredibly quickly.
That's
And
at his
So,
home. That's at his home.
would you care to respond to the first half about the increased wages among the cabinet, because it is
yeah, I mean, some of
extremely
that.
higher than.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I mean, some of them are making, I think, roughly.
$275,000.
Yeah, I was thinking it was 260,000, but you may be right on that. Yeah, I mean, I'll use.
Is that already approved by the?
Yeah,
the budget
that's
board?
part of the general fund or the administrative fund. But I will also mention this too. You're talking about people that are over an organization that covers the entire state of Indiana, and a lot of employees. For example, do you know what the president of Hamilton Center out of Terre Haute makes?
No.
I think it's about $906,000.
That's a different thing.
No, it's not a different thing. I mean, that's taxpayer funded. Much of that's funded by taxpayer dollars.
Did you vote for it?
I voted for the budget, but actually what we did is we did reduce the salary on that. In fact, I actually brought the newspaper in with me. It's in today's Terre Haute Tribune Star. Hang on, I can tell you real
Can we
quick.
go on, move on so we can get.
Okay.
Hi, my name is AJ Porter. I was born and raised in Linton. Now I go to school over in Bloomington. I'm an IU student. And we're talking a lot about the budget bill. And there was something in there that I'm very curious about.
Sure.
Seemingly, I don't know if it was put in there at the last minute, but in the budget bill that passed, there was a provision in there that gave the governor complete and total control over the IU Board of Trustees. Multiple elected positions that were initially held by alumni have been eliminated, and now it's my understanding that the governor has complete control over the board. He can essentially appoint and fire people at will.
Right.
I would like to know why this had to be in the budget bill, like the last thing that had to be done, and as opposed to just being its own thing. I mean, I think I learned about it the day after it happened, and I would consider myself pretty on top of things that, you know, would affect me or affect Southern Indiana, and I would just like to know why. Why remove democratically elected positions and essentially make government bigger in terms of things that affect me? I mean, now, these are offices I could have been able to run for as a concerned citizen, and now I would have to be, the government would have to choose me for it. So I'd like to know why we decided to make government bigger.
The bottom line is that, yes, that was put in the budget bill, and the primary reason for that is because of a lot of the excess spending being done specifically at Indiana University for programs that are are weekly attended. Basically degrees. Like, for example, there's a degree you can get at Indiana University called General Studies. All right. Well, you know, the bottom line. Well, but okay, you say that's for the university to decide, but the bottom line is the taxpayers are paying for that. And, the taxpayers. I mean, a lot of the higher education.
I'm a taxpayer. And I'm also an Indiana University student, and as part of my degree in public relations, which is, I guess by any standard, a real degree unless, you know, someone's being a real jerk about it, I also have a minor, do some coursework in linguistics, and I'm part of one of these programs. I am learning Estonian, which is a very rarely taught language, and we have the only full-time Estonian professor in the country there. And she is not in danger, but some of her peers, she's worried about them losing their jobs, languages that are also uncommonly taught, like Finnish. So when you say that, I don't feel any better. It sounds like, oh no, yeah, there are things, the answer is things that I care about are going to go away. And that just makes me more concerned.
Well, the bottom line though is, all right, if the people that want to go to those classes and they want to go to those individuals, that's one thing, but the bottom line is it's still the taxpayers are the ones that are being asked to foot the bill for that. And so, they are. It's part of the budget. I'm sorry?
I happily do. I am a taxpayer.
Well, a lot of taxpayers may not feel like funding a degree in Finnish, for example.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. Finnish is one of the programs that they're worried about getting cut.
What's it got to do with who's on the board?
It has a lot to do with
Yeah,
who's
but
on
that's
the board.
answered any of my questions. I wanted to come here in good faith, but I'm genuinely now very concerned.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is that, yes, with the governor having the right to appoint the trustees, first of all, only 2.5% of the alumni at Indiana University were even participating in the selection of the trustees.
Who cares?
A lot of citizens don't vote in the general election. Yeah, we're next to West Virginia and voting too.
She's been waiting.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Robin Ford, and I'm a retired veteran, and I support the vets. And I'm just wondering what you're doing for the 45th district for our veterans?
Well, I know one of the things that we've done is basically when on retirement pensions, I don't believe veterans are paying any income taxes on that.
Not state.
State, yeah.
Right. But I mean,
Right.
we don't have control over the federal, but that's a pretty big advantage, a pretty big plus there.
That's been going on, you know, that's been a long time, I mean.
A few years, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if there's anything you personally have been involved with or.
Well, one of the
you've
things
been
that was in the
involved
budget this year as well had to do with the Gold Star families, that basically, if you get a park pass, for example, and you're a member of a Gold Star family, you don't pay for that pass. I mean, that's a small thing, but I would say probably one of the bigger issues has to do with the not paying any income tax on your retirement.
And the other question is, do you have anything to do with or know anything about like Townhall Regional and Union combining? Do you know anything about that?
I actually went to that meeting, it was earlier this week, later last week. I want to say it was maybe Thursday night, but regardless, what at least I heard one of the doctors share, he was an OBGYN, and he made the comment, he said, the bottom line is that he said, I practiced at both hospitals, both at Union and also at Regional. And they had a meeting at the Ivy Tech, and their big auditorium that holds probably 750, 800 people, something like that, I'm gonna guess. But anyhow, he said the problem of it is that the corporation that runs Regional Hospital right now, a lot of the money that's needing to be poured into it for both the medical help that they need and both in facilities is not going there. Now, whether that's accurate or not, I don't know, but he did share that. And he said this is not a matter of ideology, this is a matter of reality. Now, I did speak with a fellow that works at Regional, and he said, well, he said it is true that we've lost a lot of our professional medical staff, but he said the reason we have is because he said so many of them are fearful that they're going to lose their jobs, that they went ahead, and he said a lot of them went over to Paris, Illinois hospital, for example, because it's close by and so forth. So right now, I mean, the meeting that took place there was in front of the Indiana Medical Association, and so they were going to listen to the testimony, and there was, I don't know, an hour and a half of testimony, something like that, maybe even 2 hours, and so they were going to listen to the testimony, take it under advisement, and then to see whether or not they would approve that Union Hospital buying out Regional. But again, I don't want to, I mean, my parents have both gone to both, well, and they were both this side of heaven. They've gone to both hospitals, and they were treated very well at both of them, so I don't have I'm not going to criticize either hospital. I like them both, but the bottom line is I know a lot of the employees at Regional that have approached me individually, they were afraid to testify in fear that they might lose their jobs in the future. So, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's as much as I know about it.
Okay, thank you.
This is just a point of information, so it's
Sure.
a 1 minute thing as opposed to 4 minutes.
Okay.
Or 10 minutes, however.
Sure.
Right on. You talked about Indiana being citizen legislators.
Right.
Versus Illinois being formal permanent legislator, full-time legislator.
Right.
But the citizen legislators who work part-time by definition make $235,000 a year? Is that what you said?
Not at all, no.
Oh, I thought that's what you said earlier. Oh, did you? Oh.
The cabinet.
No, that's the cabinet.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, excuse me.
No, they make like 30.
Okay,
Yeah.
my bad.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Now I'm gonna go get a hold of somebody tomorrow and say, wait a minute, you've been shortchanging me on my paycheck. So.
It would be.
That's a point.
Hi,
Hello.
my name's Blake Birch.
Uh-huh.
I would like to start with thanking you for being here today. I greatly appreciate you coming to answer our questions and our concerns. However, my question is, you have repeatedly supported anti-LGBT everything in your career,
Mm-hmm.
but you also this year you introduced a bill that every school room should have the 10 Commandments. So
Right.
how do you reconcile God's commandment to love thy neighbor with your apparent hate for LGBT individuals?
Just because that I believe that there are two sexes, male and female, does not mean that I hate a person in doing that. And whenever I introduce legislation, for example, one of the bills I introduced, it never got passed as legislation, and then the governor issued an executive order on it. It prohibited people from changing their birth certificates from male to female or female to male unless there was an accident by the doctor or mistake or whatever. And so basically, what if, for example, somebody, came up to you and said, you shouldn't steal your neighbor's stuff. Or somebody came up to you and said, you really need to respect the fact that, your neighbor is married and stay away from their spouse. I mean, I'm not assuming that you have done any of these things, but my point is, I view the 10 Commandments, whether or not you share my faith or not. I see motivational slogans in classrooms all the time. And I look at the 10 Commandments as maybe, well, in fact, not maybe, as the best motivational commandments that we could ever have. And so and again, you're comparing my support for things like don't take your neighbor's stuff, don't cheat with your neighbor's spouse and so forth, with hatred towards LGBT and to LGBTQ, and that's simply not true. But I also, I am not going to sit back and allow our children to be told that that they can transition from a male to a female or a female to a male. I think that is destructive to that particular child, and I will not back down on that issue.
Hold on, Blake, go ahead.
Based on what child psychology experience that you have, do you have any child psychology experience?
I don't care if I've got child psychology.
That wasn't my question.
No, okay. Yeah, I do have a lot of child psychology experience.
Oh, okay.
I have 3 children and I have 6 grandchildren.
That's
not what he means.
I don't care what he means. I'm telling you. So I guess what I'll ask you is a parent, is the fact that a parent successfully raises a child and helps with their grandchildren, do you not give any credit to parents for doing that?
That's not a trained psychologist.
Certainly it's psychology. It's absolutely, any parent in this room ought to recognize there's some psychology to that.
That's not a degree.
I don't care if it's a degree or not. I don't have to have a degree to know that my boys are boys and my girls are girls.
Hey, Bruce, I wired an electrical outlet one time. Does that make me an electrical engineer?
No. But I will ask you this: when you wired the outlet, did the outlet work?
Heck yeah, it worked.
So it makes you, it made you a capable electrician.
All right,
My name's Kevin Craig. You mentioned the 10 Commandments. And have you also read the Constitution?
Yes, I have.
And the First Amendment?
Yes.
Okay. And does the First Amendment say that the government should not have should not make any laws regarding establishment of religion?
No, it doesn't. The Soviet Union's Constitution says. No, what it says is that Congress shall not establish or prohibit the free establishment of religion thereof, and allowing.
That's not an accurate quote.
And it's absolutely accurate. Pull it up. Pull it up on your phone. Pull it up. No, pull it up. Pull it up.
It'll take time. Yeah. But all right, let's.
No, what I said was accurate. I did not establish in a bill that allows the 10 Commandments to be posted on a wall. I am not establishing a federal religion, nor am I prohibiting the free exercise of religion, and that's what it says.
but isn't that discriminatory against people who don't follow that religion?
Right.
No, I mean, again, I just think that those are basically good platitudes to live by. There's no question those
What are
come
the
from
first
Scripture.
2 or 3 platitudes in the 10 Commandments? They're to worship that God.
That is true.
They're not anything about morals, about ethics. They're
Well,
about,
there are things about morals and ethics in
there
there
are
for sure.
Yeah, there are. Yeah. Murder and other things. But the first commandments in there are about recognizing that God. All right. What about somebody that does not recognize that God? Is that not discriminatory to have that up in their classroom, their public classroom, thinking that that is what's being endorsed by their public education?
It is not creating a federal law.
Separation of church and state. Separation of church and state.
Federal law doesn't matter.
And where is the separation of church and state mentioned in our Constitution, our federal? It's not in there. Where is it at? No. Where?
It says
It's in the
it
Federalist
forbids
Papers.
Congress from both promoting one religion over another.
Where is that
and
at in our
restrict-
Constitution?
In the First Amendment, I'm reading it verbatim.
The commandments say God, which is a universal.
Right.
Muslims say
Okay,
God.
I'm reading verbatim
They don't, they say
from
Allah.
the First Amendment.
They also say God.
Yeah.
And they also
There is no
worship
part of our Constitution
Yeah.
that even refers to separation of church and state.
There's
That's
no
in the
mention of God
Federalist
in the
Papers.
Constitution.
The Federalist Papers
When
is
you
a whole
say
other
Jesus,
ballgame.
that's a-
Benjamin Franklin was one of the primary authors of that, and also the Anti-Federalist Papers, which I've read both of them. And the bottom line was, those were simply to show how various parts of the Constitution came into being. And so the Federalist Papers are not the Constitution. They were very devout founding fathers that were studying the Constitution, and that's where that came from.
That developed the Constitution.
Yeah, but it
Go ahead,
says,
Amanda, sorry.
this is the verbatim words of the First Amendment, protecting one religion. Congress is forbidden from protecting one religion over another and restricting an individual's religious practices. It
And that's in the,
guarantees.
where is
it
that in
guar-
the Constitution? Where does it say that?
It's in the first, I'm quoting the First Amendment.
So, I have the First Amendment
Yeah.
pulled up on the Constitution website, and just for clarity's sake, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, abridging the freedom of speech or the press, or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So you are right. That is an interpretation that's based in the Constitution and Federalist Papers. Amanda, can you go ahead?
Yes, my name is Amanda Jackson. I just have a question.
Sure.
Going back to salary increases for governor, and that was the 2023 budget, I believe, that increased that.
That sounds right, yeah, I think you're right.
And so it increased the governor's salary by something like 65%, taking him from 133,000 roughly to 221,000 roughly.
Okay.
But my question is, there are increases for the top executive or top executives of the government. However, in this budget, we are cutting programs for the poor. In Indiana, there's a minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. And there is a House Bill 1364 that never made it out of committee that was to raise the minimum wage. I want to know your position on raising the minimum wage.
Basically, I do not support that, and the reason that I don't support that is because the assumption is that in raising the minimum wage, what you're doing is that you're indicating that a person will never increase above that salary. All right, and so what ends up happening, well, whether or not, I mean, you can agree with me or not, but the bottom line is that what I find interesting on that is that everybody who says, well, you know, we need to create jobs and so forth, an individual, let's let them get a chance to get on the ladder, and then they can climb the ladder, and they do. I mean, many times they do. And the bottom line is, have you ever hired anybody to work at your house, whether it be mowing or whatever, painting, whatever?
I mean, I do most things myself.
Okay, all right. I mean, all right. I'll use an example of a fellow that approached me recently about that issue. He was going on about that issue, and then I found out that whenever he had hired work all around his house, he was finding, you know, the kid in the neighborhood that would do the work the cheapest. Well, everybody has the opportunity to again, to improve themselves and to climb up the ladder. And so I do not assume that because somebody steps on the ladder at minimum wage that they're going to be stuck at that. You know, and so I'm saying let them get on the ladder and let them climb. And so it's.
Do you think that by raising the minimum wage would maybe motivate people more to be able to get on the ladder to climb?
I mean, I can tell you this. I mean, I can find, Bob Heat and I were talking about this issue at Terre Haute recently. We went through a list of the employers in Terre Haute that were hiring, and it was, you know, $20-some an hour, pretty much off the charts. I mean, the biggest issue that I hear from employers is that they just simply can't get employees, and it has nothing to do with the salary. The bottom line is that, and not trying to just dissuade on it, but if you go to, there's a video called Demographic Winter. You can probably find it on YouTube. There's another one called Demographic Bomb, which is a sequel or a follow-up to it. And so anyhow, the bottom line is that the years ago, the fellow that produced that, he's a mathematician, and he won some type of, you know, a worldwide award for predicting the economic calamities that were going to hit most industrialized nations. And right now, the biggest problem that employers have is literally finding help, you know, to that will, you know, where they can come in and work. And so what we found in Terre Haute is we went through and made a list, and I was amazed at the number of employers that were starting in the $25 an hour range.
Okay, and just to piggyback off of what I was earlier mentioning, you supported those increase in salaries.
I did.
How do you reconcile that with the cuts that are, you know, impacting poor people in our communities?
Real people.
Well, I mean, I will tell you this, at least as far as I'm concerned, I also voted for a bill that the Senate, they increased their salary. I voted to not take a salary increase. So on the House side.
We have an online question that I'm going to pair with that because many of our BMV workers aren't necessarily minimum wage, but are lower waged workers. And so this person says, I work for the BMV and want to know why the upper crust of the BMV got bonuses, but frontline workers did not.
That part I'm not sure about. I mean, I truly don't know what to tell you because I'm not certain of it. I'm not aware of that. I mean, I know a lot of the budget we don't necessarily approve. You know, there are times that salaries are approved, you know, such as the governor, lieutenant governor, and so forth. But on some of it, the money goes into the BMV, and I don't want to pretend that I'm aware of something that I'm not denying what they're saying. I'm just not specifically aware of it.
I appreciate that. I'm going to go here and then here.
Do you think, I guess I should say no, do you think the minimum wage is a livable wage, including inflation?
I think the livable wage is, I'll repeat, it's a starting wage.
But as of right now, can people live on it?
It would be really tough.
Yeah, thank you.
But I will also say that a person is not, they're not obligated to stay in that job for life or maybe in that particular
How long
position.
should they work until they can live?
What I would say is that, I mean, for example, when I worked in my dad's body shop, all right, when Lola and I were, when we had our first child, Bethany, all right, I made a minimum wage working for my dad, all right. I didn't stay there. I loved my father, but he had a small body shop. That's all he could afford to pay me. And the bottom line was I got my insurance license and went into the insurance industry and made a lot more money as a result of doing that. And I did a boatload of work, you know, just to get my expertise and so forth. But and my dad knew that. I mean, he was doing as well as he could. I mean, you know, he didn't. It was again a small auto body repair shop. You know, he didn't do very well at it. I mean, you know, he made a living, but not a great one. But I wasn't stuck staying there.
How will they retain workers if they're expected to leave to get a better paying job?
I mean, you're asking me to assume something in every single instance. I mean, in my case, I mean, you know, I couldn't have predicted that I would eventually. I mean, what ended up happening, I came down to pay my Farm Bureau insurance premium in Linton, and I had actually studied to get my insurance license, and when I was there paying my bill, I happened to mention to one of them in there, I said, well, I studied it, you know, on my own, and I got my insurance license, and I did. I studied at home and got my license, and somebody went and said, well, wait a minute, let us go get the manager. So he came out, and he said, hey, he said, we've got a shortage of insurance agents, not there, but I had to move to Crawfordsville. So Lola and I and Bethany, and then eventually Rebecca came along when we lived at Crawfordsville. But again, nobody held a gun to me and said, you've got to stay in that body shop working for your dad sanding cars. All right, again, did I make some uncomfortable changes? Without a doubt, but it did improve things for my family.
That sounds Christ-like, not helping the poor.
You know,
That
I'm
sounds so
sorry,
Christ-like.
I'm sorry, but that's just such crap on your part. That is just
No,
crap on your part.
Next question. When they ask for your shirt, you give them their coat.
Well, then why don't you go out and start handing out your money?
Oh, I have, bub. Yes, I have.
I'm not impressed with your, you've got
You are in a position where you could actually help so many poor people.
you know what I did? You know what I did is I fought so people could keep their homes, their farms, and their businesses with Senate Bill 1 to help control taxes. And you find a problem with that.
Okay, I just have a statistic for you, some figures. The MIT living wage calculator, it calculates what the living wage should be based on state. So they take information and they can calculate what the living wage should be. And this data is as recent as February of this year. And in the state of Indiana, for a single person without children, the living wage is $20.81 an hour. Our minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. The poverty wage is $7.42. So as you can see, you know, from that data, we are far below what the living wage actually is.
Again, that's assuming that a person never makes anything above that.
Why do you want people? Okay.
I have a question
I don't want
about
them to stay at that. I want them to excel and to make more money. I do.
I have a question about the untested rape kits. Why are there so many, and are we fixing that? And what are we doing so it won't happen again?
I know that we did. There was a lot of money put into pulling those forward, and I'll be honest with you, I don't remember why there were so many that hadn't.
Because there wasn't any money, they said.
That's right.
Okay.
We can get her name and you can
Sure.
get back
Okay.
with her if you want.
Yeah. Do you care if we get your name afterwards?
No, I wanted an answer now.
I don't have an answer for you right now.
Okay.
But we'll get back with you. He doesn't get back, they don't respond.
So-
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they absolutely do.
I don't want
I don't know what number.
to drag this out, but I don't feel like I got an answer to my question. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Well, I feel like I gave you an answer.
You told me that...
I didn't give you the answer you wanted.
Well, you also didn't tell me why it was snuck into the budget bill at the last minute.
I mean, it wasn't snuck in at the last minute. There were 24 hours to study it over. Well, I'm telling you, that's a lot better. Let me put it this way, all right? I don't know whether, I'm going to assume most of you are Democrats in the room, maybe not everybody, but many of you are. I can remember when Pat Bauer was the Speaker of the House, we would be warned to be, when they handed the budgets out before we were doing it on computer or our phones or whatever.
Now, the we're through the.
No. I knock it off. I've got an answer here. All right. The bottom line is I would be told to be careful touching that paper because it was so hot. We would get the paper, we would get the budget right before we had to vote on it.
Okay? So, I just want to get this straight.
I don't care if you think I'm terrible. I think you're.
So I just want to make sure that I have the answer to my question correct.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
The answer as to why these positions, these democratically elected positions, were replaced with entirely appointed positions, total control to appoint and fire, is so the government can have more control over what IU does.
It is so the governor can appoint the trustees.
That's just the bill. That doesn't tell me.
Yeah, let me hang on just a second. I want to.
Ron is going to get the Mid-State Corridor.
Hang on just a moment.
He's going to make this all thinking the president of IU one day.
It had to. Okay.
Like Mitch Sting.
Here we go. All right. I'm just. I'm pulling this right out of the Terre Haute Tribune Star, which was out today. But it says, in addition, House Enrolled Act 1001 gives the governor sole power to appoint trustees at Indiana University, Bloomington. And then it says the legislation suggests a degree of inattention to the details of higher education operates. He said that was James Gustafson, faculty senate chairman. And then it says, okay, in one example, the bill sets a minimum number of graduates for degree programs. For a bachelor's degree program, if the average number of students who graduate over the immediately preceding 3 years is fewer than 15 students, the educational institution must request approval from the Commission for Higher Education to continue the program.
So the intention is to cut programs that make IU competitive?
No, I would say that something that graduated 15 students over a period of 3 years is
Those
not
15
making
students
anybody
wouldn't have been
competitive.
here. Those other students in the Estonian program wouldn't have been here if it weren't for this program. They come from all over the country.
They may have to go somewhere else then.
They don't have anywhere else to go. And why are you taking jobs away from Indiana?
Because I'm looking at, in answer to the fellow's question about looking out for the poor, I'm looking out for people that own their homes and their farms and their businesses in Indiana, so they don't have to pay for programs that barely anybody has an interest in graduating.
All right, hold on.
A lot of working people don't own their homes.
Hold on.
My mother doesn't own her home. She hasn't in decades.
And I mean, that's her choice.
No, it's not. It's her choice.
No, but what if you say she hasn't for decades? I mean, my point is, if she.
Do you have any idea what the hell's going on here?
Okay, so hold on.
I apologize. I'm sorry.
Your apology is accepted.
So, Mr. Borders, I have a question.
Sure.
Because I've heard a few different people tonight talk about having problems getting a hold of you, getting responses from your office. I know when I talked to the superintendent at Bloomfield School yesterday to get the facts and figures about the impact of the budget, one of the things that he wasn't able to be here tonight, but one of the things that he passed along is that since he became the superintendent 2 years ago, that he had reached out to your office repeatedly asking to meet with you, and he's never got a response. And so how can people get responses?
Well, first of all, I do want to apologize to those that did reach out. I'm not saying this as an excuse, but it is the reality. When we're in session, quite frankly, it's like drinking out of a fire hose. Bottom line is, a lot of times I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning, frequently don't get home until very late, and the point of it is that it was a really, really tough session, not that that's an excuse, and for that I offer my sincere apologies, and trying to catch up with with people, and even though session is over, still some of the issues we can still sit down and have a chat about it. So.
And so I know, again, I know our superintendent said that he's been trying for 2 years, that he's repeatedly reached out to.
I mean, I have a home phone that's listed. I have.
And so that's my question. Do you want people to call?
I'll be glad to give out my home phone. Yeah.
I personally would call your insurance office.
Sure.
That's what I do.
I have no problem with people calling me. So.
You are okay with people calling your insurance office and your home phone?
The home phone would be easier, just because when I'm in the office, it's just crazy. I mean,
Can I get that from you to pass along to our superintendent?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
There you go.
Yes.
Earlier, you sort of made a statement about the carbon sequestration question.
Right.
As a point of clarity, you said, well, that was all the federal government.
No, I didn't. I said the federal government had approved that. But it wasn't just all the federal government, but I did say that. And you've heard me tell you that before up at Terre Haute, many times.
It was not approved by anybody federal. In our state, it was approved by our state legislature. All but one voted for it, so I guess we could say it's bipartisan. But it's kind of hard to listen to somebody say that they are protecting taxpayers when these people are taxpayers and they're having poison pumped directly onto their farms under their own homes, and they weren't even notified. Also, even if you don't care about the fact that this is terribly unsafe, everyone, it is a dump of carbon. What about the landowner's rights? We're hearing about all these taxpayers' rights, the rights of the people. This is as basic as it gets, Representative Borders. This is their farm. Some of these people have these farms in them for years.
250 years, the one lady
Yes.
showed me a letter she got in the mail.
Yes.
Saying eminent domain, they're taking over your farm.
Right, and to pass this off as the feds got us into this.
No, I
this
never
ship-
said the feds got it in. I said the federal government had approved it. That they did, and you know
Okay,
that.
but that
You
would
know that
not
for a
have,
fact.
that would not have made it come to Indiana. The federal government approving it does not make it an Indiana thing. This company is a for-profit company. This
Right.
isn't a highway going through. This isn't a school that has to be built.
Mhm.
This is for-profit. I mean, Bruce, this goes against everything I've ever heard you say. This is people's rights, basic rights. You want to defend this. This should have been the hill you died on. The farmer, these people now are being told by their insurance companies that this will be so risky, that this is laid under their home, that they will not be able to insure it. They won't be able to absorb the cost of something like this. This can take out the whole area.
Let's back this up, all right? Keep in mind, one of the hats that I wear is as an insurance agent.
That's why
All
I
right,
brought it
okay,
up.
no, all right. Which insurance agent or agency or company told you that they couldn't insure their homes because
They
of
didn't
this?
tell me, you have heard them.
No, I haven't
mention
heard them say
they
that, no.
have, they've stood at Cracker Barrels one
No,
right
no,
after
but
another.
what, all right, who told you that those homes are uninsurable because of carbon sequestration?
I have heard these people's eyewitness testimony.
Who
that-
told them from an insurance company?
I would
Okay,
not
well,
get
your
into their
insurance
personal
company-
business. I don't know.
Yeah, I
their
mean,
insurance
we
man.
insure people all the time that have,
So they
that
can
there's
just contact
mine
us.
subsidence activity
They'll take
underneath
care
the
of it.
property, and those
You've
mines are
never
a lot.
had this, cause this has never been here
This is-
before.
Well,
This
but I
is-
mean, my
this is
point is,
unknown.
the carbon sequestration is basically, what you're saying is their homes are uninsurable as a result of this, and what I'm saying is, never have I had a company even remotely, come close to refusing somebody because of carbon sequestration.
They have stood in public meeting after meeting.
The insurance companies.
In
did as well.
Vermilion County, in Vigo County, they just called a moratorium in Vermilion County last night. They have been told this is one of the risks. They will not know till the carbon is actually under their home. But what they're saying is, the assessors are telling them, the realtors are telling them, your home won't be worth $120,000 anymore, because people are going to say, why do I want to buy that house with a carbon dump underneath it? Why do I want to send my kids to school at a school that's 2.5 miles from a carbon dump?
It's too
So
risky.
see, it's invading all of their property rights.
It's just too risky. It's dangerous. The breaches that happened in Louisiana and Mississippi are disastrous. And it sucks out, if a plume happens, and we're on a fault line, and if a plume happens, it sucks all the energy, I mean the oxygen out of the atmosphere, and your cars won't run. The emergency vehicles can't come in and rescue people. It is so, it's like Love Canal all over again. My first question to you was, what are you gonna do to protect the Indiana citizens?
First of all, you know, the bottom line is we may just have to agree to disagree on this issue.
She just has insurance information that she has pulled up.
Uh-huh.
And it says insurance companies generally do not insure the homes built or modified in a way that directly contributes to carbon dumping.
A home built, though, there's a difference that you say that directly. Read that again, what you just read to me.
Insurance companies generally do not insure homes built or modified in any way that directly contribute to carbon dumping.
Right, but it's saying that the home is contributing to it. I mean, that's what she just read to me.
Why don't you get the name and number? It's
Yeah.
not the home.
Insurance companies
It's-
are increasingly
Hold on,
concerned
hold on a
with
second.
environmental risks associated with climate change and carbon dumping.
Okay, let me just read
All right,
the red.
we just have time for a couple more questions, so.
I just want people, don't accept this, please help. We've gotta keep fighting because they're gonna
Do
put
some
it all over the
research.
state.
Do some research on it. Get educated on this issue. That's all we're asking.
Yeah. So my talking point, or question for you as well. Our state has $2.5 billion in surplus, and yet I see loads of things that have been cut. And it's very hard for me to see that we continue to have this surplus, but we continue to not fund so many things.
That will
and
run the
cut.
state for about 30 days.
I'm not trying to fund the state. I'm
Well,
curious
we
why
have to
we're
fund it.
not.
That's part of my
But why are we
obligation.
cutting so many things when we still have
Because
billions of dollars
I mean,
for taxpayers' money?
when you say billions of dollars, you're comparing that to you or I and what that would do for us. For a state of Indiana, that won't do much good at all. I mean,
Just what would that do for our libraries?
Well,
right?
but my
What
point
would that
is
do for our public
that-
health
all right,
department? What would
well,
that,
it
what would
would
that
be-
opportunity be?
we would be foolish to spend every penny that the state has in reserve.
I'm not saying we spend all of it, but why do we continue
Because
to
that's
carry?
about 30 days, and that's not
So
a
if we
big
cut
cushion.
everything off, we only have 30 days of funding. I hear you say
Right,
that.
right.
But we continue to carry this giant surplus and cut
That's
more
not
and
a
more
giant
programming.
surplus. I
In my
mean,
opinion, it is.
all right,
So-
let me ask you
I
this,
agree.
all right? How much do you make in a year?
That is none of my business to share with you.
All right,
That is
so
my
you won't
business.
answer, okay. My point being that if you only had enough money to feed your family and provide for your family for 30 days, would you spend it all and go, hey, we had 30 days of money?
But I think
I am funding our community at large.
Well,
These are the taxpayer dollars.
I
We
mean, my
continue to
point
hold
is
on to them. What is the
2.5
plan? What is the plan for that $2.5 billion?
We do keep it in reserve. I mean,
Forever.
it-
Forever.
It's, I'm not sure how long, but the bottom line is I don't want to spend us down to zero.
And I don't want that either, but I hate to see
You just
cuts
want us
and
closer
cuts
to
and
zero.
cuts.
Don't go to zero, you
So-
have a budget because of that. That's why you make a budget. You fund your state.
So, I do have one more question for you,
Sure.
from me. You're a landlord.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a social worker. I've been and worked with lots of clients in your houses. I know that you understand the desperateness of a lot of people looking for housing. We are in a housing crisis. I have people in this moment.
Affordable.
I have people in this moment that can get a HUD voucher but can't get a house. So what are you doing, like, as a person that has intimate knowledge of the needs of housing? What are you doing at a state level to help increase affordable housing in our district?
Well, a lot of the things, and it's not just in our district, it's throughout the entire state of Indiana. One of the things that's been very difficult, and they were running into that issue in California after the fires that just took place. They needed more housing than they had housing to provide, and so Governor Newsom, one of the first things he did was to basically back off on some of the regulations that the state of California typically requires. And that doesn't mean they were putting up shanty shacks, I don't mean it that way, but they did back off a lot. And one of the things that I will say that at least my Republican colleagues and I have typically voted on is to allow, for example, where you might have communities that they won't, for example, allow homes with metal roofs, using that as an example. What you see in our area, you're starting to see more of these barn dominiums, you're seeing metal roofs and so forth, and so I'll use that as an example. But what we're trying to do is to reduce some of the overreach in some of the, particularly some of the I'll call it the more metro areas, or for lack of a better word, where they're saying, you've got to do this, and this, and this. before you can build a home. Well, all of those things add to the cost of producing a home, and so what we voted on is to reduce a lot of the regulations in building homes to where people can basically build a home more inexpensively than normal. That's at least a step in the right direction.
Okay, excuse me, she said in this area, as far as I know in Greene County, the only thing required is a septic permit. Correct?
Okay, so basically,
I mean, so we're not over-regulated. We want to know what you're doing to help the people who need housing.
I told you what I'm doing to help people that need housing, and maybe it's possible.
You're talking about regulations. We don't have any.
Well, just because they're not here doesn't mean they don't exist.
Well, they're not holding us up.
Well,
What's the price of eggs in China?
All right, I want to say, last question goes to you.
All right. And it's not necessarily a question. I just really want to make sure you understand what's happening. So my name is Jessica McCamey. I'm the director of the Eastern Green Bloomfield Public Library, so we serve half the county. Right now, I am facing property tax reductions, so my budget is reduced for next year.
Okay.
The president did an executive order to remove federal funding. Our E-rate, which pays 70% of our internet, which we provide free for half the county, anybody that wants to stop by a library, free internet, free computer access, is being challenged in Supreme Court right now. So that saved us $20,000 last year. So that may be going away. And the state budget, I know you said most organizations were reduced by 5%. The state library
was actually 10 if you look at 5 and the potential another 5, but yeah.
The state library was reduced by 30.
Okay.
That was the beginning of the budget.
All right.
And they were waiting for the forecast to see if that might improve, and if it was bad numbers, then it did not.
Right, right.
State library provides a lot of cooperative services for all the other libraries in the state. I'm looking at having to find probably $60,000, $70,000 in the next couple of years each year.
Yeah.
So you're worried about employment, you're worried about all these things. I'm trying to provide a lot of things for our county, and we do. We provide a warm place in the winter, we provide air conditioning in the summer, internet, faxing, printing. We do have a vegetable garden, free food.
No, they got cut. They got cut.
Not yet.
Well,
we are planting in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
All right. I need you to understand that we provide a lot of very basic services for people who may not own properties in the county, but we're struggling.
And it's an integral part because you want children to come here and get a love for reading.
Right.
And carry that through.
Imagination library, that's that too.
I mean, this is so important.
We're taking a hit.
I mean, you know, I'm not going to sit back and say that, you know, that this year's budget was an easy budget, but again, you know, whether it's received or not, I'll just share with you.
Then why did you vote for the helipad, for God's sakes?
Because I realize there are times that governors need to.
He can drive just like the rest of us do.
Well, but nonetheless, in response to your statement, I guess it's more of a statement than anything. The bottom line was Senate Bill 1 was designed, again, to help out property owners and, you know, who are struggling. For example, there was a fellow that I spoke with recently. When he first moved into his home, he's retired, but his property taxes were about $2,000 a year. And then this was before the property tax caps passed, but it was a number of years ago. But I can still remember him telling me, you know, he said, and he worked at one of the auto manufacturing plants, and he said, I'm, you know, probably maybe upper, you know, middle income, you know, but he said, my property taxes are now over $12,000 a year. He said, I don't think I'm going to be able to afford to stay in my home. And so my point is, in response to those that, you know, want to know, well, you know, I thought Jesus said this and Jesus said that. Well, one of the things I will tell you that I feel absolutely no remorse about, and that's helping people to stay in their homes and so forth. Talking about a warm place or a place that's cool in the summer and so forth. And so, you know, I voted for Senate Bill 1 as a result of that.
So I'm sorry. Again, Bruce, I want to say thank you on behalf of Indiana Rural Voices for coming down tonight. I appreciate you being here. I want your home phone number before you leave. And I want to say thank you to everybody who came out tonight.
I didn't realize there was a green side to those. I only saw red this whole time I was in here. I'm serious, I've just noticed that
Yeah,
green
put the red and green things back on the table. But for real, thank you guys all for coming out tonight.
Thank you. We're the firing squad, but you did all right.
I'm serious, I had no idea there was a green side.